Driveline R&D podcast episode 74. Right.
That one peaked hard.
Director of Data Science, Alex Caravan here.
I think it's
ready to shoot. I ain't twisting anything off, bro. Ready to shoot this into Lindley's eye socket.
Kyle Lindley, post-product manager, drinking a...
Oh, yeah, I didn't say what it was. In case you can't tell.
Yeah.
In case you've never
Rocky
seen a light
Mountain
beer
Blue
before.
Coors Light, baby.
You should move this way so you're more in frame.
What do you mean? Oh, this way?
Yeah, yeah.
You want me to take
First
over?
podcast,
You want me
bro?
to take more
Yeah.
over more of the show than I already do,
Yeah,
dog?
yeah. Or actually, no, where you were is good. Just like slightly half and half out of frame. Sorry, did you?
I already went to.
Is it me now? Anthony Brady.
Oh, these are good, dude.
Director of Sports Science, Driveline Baseball, primary host of the Driveline R&D Research and Drinks podcast. This is episode 74, and we got a guest. Third time.
It's
I have the record.
hardly
I have the
a test at
unofficial
this
record.
point.
That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
Yeah.
For
Chris
first time.
Langin. And first time he's on the show with, we got Caravan here this time.
So this
We
one, it's gonna
are
matter.
we are
Let's be real.
recording.
This one, that's gonna matter.
We're not doing what we did a few weeks ago where
We're
it wasn't
not recording?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It says it's recording, so I think we should be good.
I'm gonna be looking over there the whole time.
Yeah.
Make sure that red
I
thing's
still
going.
do that pretty frequently on all the
Yeah.
other episodes.
Just you weren't there, dude, but it was tough, man.
What happened?
It just didn't hit record.
Oh, okay.
By the end
so
of the
like-
second one, I was actually.
I thought I'd hit record. I don't know what happened. I mean, we recorded a banger. It was probably like an hour and a half, just talking back and forth about stuff. Go to all hands, come back afterward. Lindley's like tearing down the stuff, wrapping up the cables, and I'm like looking in the file explorer for the video recording. Can't find it anywhere. Just nothing.
You know what other one?
Nothing,
I
dude.
saw this yesterday. I was, or probably a couple days ago, actually. Not yesterday. I don't, whatever. Maybe yesterday. Doesn't matter. But I was editing one of our videos because I on the timestamps, if you don't put 00, like the YouTube won't recognize it. And I
Yeah.
clicked on a random old Driveline R&D podcast video, and I saw it had it, and I edited. And I was looking through some other ones, and I saw episode 7. We did the same thing. If you remember, that was when we recorded on Sunday. I forget what happened, and then episode 7 was Monday morning, right before we put it out. And it might be the one I might have gone the drunkest on because I was ripping 2 stiff ass Bloody Marys. Do you remember that episode?
Referenced it last time,
And the whole time we were just like, yeah, no, sounds great for a good day of work. It's like 11 a.m. Monday,
Wait, was that?
and I was
You
over
were
at
in-
Belly's. I was over at Belly's
Yeah, I was-
apartment. She was serving me Bloody Marys, the stiffest Bloody Marys possible.
Yeah. I do remember that. I thought you were talking about the one where we did it at Pioneer Square, but we didn't have video. It was like audio only.
Oh, in that conference room.
Was that? Because that's how that happened,
Yeah.
right? We never actually got the video from that one. And there was another one with like corrupted video.
That lost some of our early fans because first 3 episodes we were like 100 plus views. Then 4th episode no video.
Yeah.
I still got like 100 views. And 5th episode got like
Either
36
Either
views.
that or COVID
like,
happening
fuck
and
this.
like
Right.
20 podcasts starting
Yeah.
within this space
Oh, yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
That's misleading feedback, though. I'd think like, oh, you got no video in the 4th one. People
Yeah.
still watched it. 5th one, hell, why bother with the camera
Yeah.
and all that fancy stuff? Like, if we're gonna get the same audience.
I
That was
was
literally
thinking-
the last in-person one before, or no, we might have had like one or two more in-person ones before COVID shut everything down, and they all just went to Zoom.
Yeah. The first 3 were 2 of them were at our old place. The 3rd one was in the gym because I had a half beard. I remember.
Yeah.
and oh yeah, dude.
I was.
That was probably your favorite. The half
Oh
beard.
my God.
Oh my God.
My origin story that you like.
I was
Yeah.
actually thinking about that, Langin, about the video. Like we originally started doing video, I think, or like with Zoom especially, so we could like share screen, do some visual like showing plots and studies and shit.
I thought it was
But like even
dude.
if we don't do that, like I kind of, even when I'm listening to a podcast, sometimes I'll like watch them on YouTube, just because even if they're just chatting, like
Sure.
I like the vibes.
Oh yeah,
Like the
for
vibes
sure.
of like
Yeah.
seeing the video on
Yeah.
top of the audio.
The viewership on this specifically is like listeners. It's at least 10
Yeah.
to 15x what the viewership is on YouTube. But definitely, I'm sure that like people who really like it, they like the video. I'm the same way. I'll like listen to audio, and then if there's a part I want to hear or something, go back, watch the video, that kind of thing.
I don't know the like deep meaning or like the cause of that, but I do know like Spotify and a lot of like I used to go to Spotify and click a song and it would just be like the album cover or something. They're now
Yeah.
they make like a little cue
Yeah.
for like a 10. So there's got to be something there. With
They also
like,
do video with podcasts.
I think-
yeah, right.
Like
right.
Rogan's
Yeah.
podcast is on video there too, which I was very surprised. I thought it
I
was
think we
only on there for a while.
might be able to get ours on there.
Oh, that would be
The
sick.
upload times might take a lot longer. I think there's something with Anchor we could do on that, but there's gonna be more updates to the podcast room soon.
Our video look is definitely fire. Plus, we do interactive stuff like throw, cap set.
For the 10 to 15x more of you listening, Caravan just threw his bottle cap at Lindley. That might have been
it's a twist
velo.
off.
Yeah, that may have been his
Yeah.
PR, dude.
Yeah.
Yo, what you guys talk about last time you were on?
Which
well,
one?
we did two. Yeah, I was gonna
The
say.
first one or the second one?
Give me both.
I think the second one there was a lot of it was about like towards the end I started ranting about like how not like if you're gonna try to be a Major League Baseball player, like
just send
pursue
it.
something absurd,
Yeah.
like there's just got to be a cost there.
Yeah.
So just like the risk of attempting to pursue a higher talent level.
Yeah.
Just how that's not like a free thing. So
Talks about
yeah.
deception too.
Mm-hmm.
Dark matter.
Yeah, just like the pitch metrics that I'd like to like know about further, which like I gave a shitty answer. I basically said like dark matter, which is everything, obviously, but like I thought the deception part of it could be like the closest thing maybe to quickly be like quantifiable. And it's also just you always hear about that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's probably models that I know like Pitch AI does whatever how long you can like see the ball, but I'd just be interested to see like how precise those get, because the biggest thing is like you want to figure out the guy who's in high A overachieving his results. Is that like noise or is like it deception? If you can add that in there, it might keep a couple of those guys who throw a little bit slower.
Especially with
keep
new
them in the
stuff
lead.
too, like comparing to Stuff Plus or other quantitative metrics, they're outperforming those consistently or something. Yeah.
So Chipotle and dating metaphors are still on the table.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
haven't
I think
gone
we
into those.
talked about Chipotle a bit. I don't remember if that was first or second.
It's tough.
I don't remember the Chipotle talk.
The only thing I do remember
We can run it
the first episode I gave some really good soup, which I would have preferred. Like I gave some shout outs. I thought I spoke
Yeah.
well of people. The second episode I don't know if I did that as good.
Yeah,
But
I just think we didn't get into it enough.
I mean, did you guys talk? I mean, this is a continuation from the man episode where he shouted you out pretty heavily on the work you're doing on the PD side.
Yeah,
Obviously-
dude, did you pay him to do that? I don't know.
dude, he's free advertising, man.
You
It's kind of
listened to
nice.
it, man. It was like there's a lot.
We had to
Yeah.
scale him down. We're like,
Yeah, we're like, dude, you don't
Langin
need to
doesn't
talk
know
about
shit, right?
Langin
We're just-
every
we're
time
just-
we talk.
you should have seen him when he was doing the analytics mini course, bro.
Yeah, it's like getting ridiculous. Man.
He might have some type of plan. Literally, we were in his car and he called his wife, or his wife called him, put it on speaker, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm with Chris." And he goes, "Oh, the master, the pitch design master." I was like, "Go, you really do be saying this to everybody." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," but.
It's good guess. It's good guess.
I don't know if you guys answered this. This is like a very basic question, but I was curious to hear from you. I think I know like a little bit about it, but what do you think are the things that you've got like improved on the most as a pitch design specialist, for lack of a standardized term, and what contributed the most to that?
I'd say identifying why a certain pitch got better, the underlying characteristics of why a sweeper worked with one pitcher and like pursuing it with another didn't work. Because if you think of coaching, like if you coach 50 athletes, it's not like don't get me wrong, this isn't like a perfect world. You sometimes some guys do get special treatment or like you put more time into them, but for the most part you're not like teaching them, you're not having like a big difference in how you go about teaching a sweeper or like teaching a gyro ball. You know, there's cues, they're synonymous. Sometimes the athlete interprets them better. Like you need to have a decent tool set, but you can kind of better identify why somebody can throw that pitch and why somebody can't. Previously, it was pretty much my interpretation was largely like arm angle and then like trial and error. But I think you can look at some things with like the fastball spin efficiency to better identify, hey, how much should we really lean into this? Like, is it 10 pitches? Should we try to like sweep it for 10 pitches? Or is it 50? You know, because like sometimes there's the reality is if you have 100 athletes, you can probably identify like 25 that can really lean into it, 40 that have no shot in hell, and then it's like, what do you do with those middle guys?
Yeah.
And you got to decide if you want to do like 10 pitches or like 100 and potentially like have it be their entire month of development.
Yeah.
You know, so I think understanding the underlying reasons of why a pitch improved. And then like we have that process logger now where we can go back, see what grip changes we're making, what cue changes we're making, and just better identify like why is the pitch getting better? Because I think it's really easy to just like, you know, you're coaching, the right athlete comes in, you give him a grip, the last coach wasn't good with them, and then you think you're really good at your job because they get a little bit better profile. But, you know, maybe if the replacement level coach, especially at a place like this, is going to be able to do that as well. So you're kind of just like got a good circumstance there. You know what I'm saying? So
college level player comes in, he wants to try a new pitch, maybe say hypothetically at a sweeper. How many sessions or how many like pitches do you start feeling comfortable? Like, okay, this guy does have a sweeper. I can start treating that as part of his arsenal rather than like still in development.
Sure. I mean, I think you can probably figure out a lot. This is completely anecdotal, but I mean, within like 5 to 10, the velocity is going to be like the biggest giveaway, right? If like they really try to get around it and they're taking off like 16, 18 ticks, it's just like it's probably not going to be in the cards. You know, like everybody can throw a sweeper. Like they can, in theory, everybody can manipulate their arm and like. If they take off a bunch of velocity to get the right wrist orientation, they can get that shape of the pitch. But the point is, like, if you throw 90 and your sweeper's 70 and your gyro ball's 80, that you don't have a sweeper. Like, you can throw it, you can get the pitch metrics, but, like, there's no sense to have that pitch, you know? So, like, just being a little bit more the process of it and just, like, kind of taking a little bit away from every session and trying to improve for the following session and learn from it. Kind of like the black box thinking thing of just, like, you know, getting feedback of what you did, why did the pitch improve, and then kind of the reality is you need to look at the pitcher's underlying talent and see what portion of it was him and what portion of it was maybe the coaching ability of providing the right grips and cues.
Have you identified any of the differences between people who can throw it without losing too much of their fastball velocity versus people who lose a ton?
Like typically the reasons for it, or
yeah, like you said, getting around the ball more, but
sure.
Like, are there any like that's like one example, but any other reasons that guys can't throw the sweeper with velo?
Big dig energy.
That's somewhere in there, man. I don't know what the R is on it, but it's somewhere in there. So the biggest, there's a couple. One, just like arm angle partially. So that doesn't have as much to do with like if you can create movement, right? But like if you're way over the top, it may be a little bit more difficult to get like a lateral pitch. For some guys, they can do it still, but like just on average, that's typically not as advantageous. And then if you're like a 45-degree arm angle or whatever, just from the side, that's going to be a lot more easier. But I think the biggest thing is just like literally if they throw a four-seamer, for 95% of athletes when they throw a four-seamer, the best profile will be obtained through upping the efficiency. So when you look at that data, you can pretty like you can know that the athlete, if they are educated, should be trying to improve the efficiency, right? So like I look at that metric, and if they have high efficiency, it means they basically get inside the ball or behind the ball, however you want to measure it. They have their pronation timing is correct. It is much more difficult for those guys to feel themselves on the other side of the ball, typically. And that is where trying to get that sweeper, it'll cost those guys like 14 to 16 miles an hour. One of the stats is like for guys who have 95% plus active spin on their fastball at the big league level.
Active spin, bro. How much did Tango pay you for this? Tom Tango, get out of our employees' DMs. Sorry, go ahead.
50% of their sliders are like gyro balls, so like less than 4 inches of horizontal break. So you can kind of like utilize that and say like, okay, for those guys, that's probably the best pitch they can throw, like a Kevin Gossman, somebody like that. And then the guys who typically can kind of get the sweeper with minimal velo trade-off. It's like the Tanner Hawks. I probably pronounced his last name wrong, but guys who like they just can't get behind a baseball to save their life. Marcus Stroman, and they typically have really good sinkers.
So the outlier is somebody who can get behind the fastball, but also throw the sweeper
all the way around the sweeper.
There's a couple guys who like Walker Buehler. He doesn't get behind his fastball, but like the profile of his fastball still has plus carry. Caleb Thielbar, who trains with us, has trained the past couple years. He's got high carry and then the ability to sweep the ball. Generally, there's like seam shifted weight components on that, so like they might out of the hand have some top spin due to their arm angle, but the way the ball is oriented basically, and I can't really explain it perfectly, but after release, it actually changes basically the movement of the pitch. And like Thielbar throws basically a slurve, but out of the hand, he gains like 8 inches of lateral break, and he actually like backspin basically starts like coming, or maybe not exactly that, but the ball starts like basically rising relative to what it was out of his hand. But I'd say fastball spin efficiency and then a little bit of arm angle for the sweeper specifically are probably like the biggest giveaways, with the additional caveat being like seam shifted wake. Basically, if you can get seam shifted wake on the ball, that's less wrist orientation forced, so like you can kind of throw that firmer. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think it's just like thinking about wrist orientation. If like fastball is your default, if you are cutting the ball with like less efficiency, you're already supinated a little more. So going to the slider, like further supinating and getting around it is a lot easier. But if your default is like a pretty high efficient on plane spin fastball, then like getting around to that sweeper, I think is a little tougher.
What are your thoughts on gyro sliders? When would it make sense to be in an arsenal? When would it not? How do you typically classify gyro slider? Because I thought your definition of less than 4 inches of horizontal break was a solid one. I mean, as far as like, you know,
with the right. So in terms of how I classified it, I said less than 4. That's how I did it through that one study. I typically just call it like the threes. So 3 inches glove side, 3 inches arm side, 3 inches back. That's like a gyro ball to me. Yeah. Those pitches generally just like anything less than 20% spin efficiency or active spin. So that's generally how I'd mark that. I mean, part of the vid is just like, what are your alternative options, right? Because like I see people in comment sections all the time be like, well, gyro spin's bad. And it's like, well, yeah, it's bad if you're like whatever. You're Blake Trinan or something. If you're, I mean, I know he's got a lot of seam shifted wake, but if you're somebody who can sweep a ball, it's bad. Sergio Romo probably doesn't want a lot of gyro. He doesn't need to turn to a gyro slider, you know. But if you don't have the capability of doing that, that's when like the gyro ball comes into play. And to be frank, if you can just throw it like 84, 85, it's typically a little bit easier to command from like our research on intended zones as well. So like a league average slider is insanely valuable. Like a league average slider that especially if you can throw it like 35. I mean, if you throw a 45, great. But even like hitting 35% of the time, like Robbie Ray throws, it's kind of like a cutter, but like he throws it 40% of the time. It's like average on the models, but you know, he can use it to both hitters and there's still a lot of value in that pitch, you know. But
I think commanding a sweeper versus a gyro is like very, very different. Mm-hmm. Very, very, very different. And it could just be too because of the like the amount of break that you're getting too. That's like maybe just so tough. But from my experience, whenever like slider velo has gone up, like movement's gone down, like a speed horizontal break trade off for sure. But locating it and getting it in the zone is so much easier. Like if I'm throwing get me over or behind in the count sliders, like it's honestly just typically more gyro-y just because I feel more confident putting in the zone. But if I really want to create like a ton of break, I feel like it's just because you're getting so around the ball. Sure. Like it's much harder to like control where you want to go.
Kind of like, I mean, you hear people talk about focal points all the time. That's probably more what it feels like. It feels like you've got to like land. You basically land a sweeper, whereas like you can kind of like throw if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you know?
I mentioned that to you. I feel so much more confident throwing sweeper slider to righty compared to lefty, hands down. Because like on a righty, I just look at their butt. Like that's like literally what I'm aiming at is like back hip. But when a lefty's in the box, I have like nothing over there. Yeah. So it's honestly a lot harder. Also, that's probably too why I've been a lot of lefties when I throw the sweeper.
That's actually a good that's actually an interesting note I hadn't thought of. Do people in PD sessions, like, do you specify or talk about platoon splits? Like, are you like, this is going to be something you want to hit hammer lefties with versus righties?
Sure, yeah, especially for like the higher level guys who like. A lot of it too depends on their pitch arsenal. Like again, if you have if guys are fastball slider, it don't matter about the platoon split, you know. But for guys who can like throw a curveball that's like more of a downer, or they have a good changeup, you definitely identify like, hey, you know, a sweeper is pretty like sensitive to the handedness of the hitter. Now it's still really good, right, to lefties as well. But we definitely talk about those things and just like say, hey, like there's going to be maybe a little bit less blue on this when it's thrown to an opposite-handed hitter on the heat maps. Yeah. You know, or it just needs to be commanded in a different spot. But we do talk, like cutters are a really good example. Like those actually tend to play about the same to both handed hitters, and that's why if you see like a lefty starter in the big leagues, if they don't have a changeup, they typically have a cutter, or their slider, like Robbie Ray, Clayton Kershaw, is basically a cutter movement-wise. So we do talk about that stuff.
One last question for me on PD prep, because I mean these are all questions I've kind of thought about, but figured might as well hit them with the cameras rolling, baby. I guess I'm curious how you manage the different levels of information you have on a player coming in, right? A big leaguer, you have clean data from StatCast, a bunch of support. You can find stuff online, all this stuff. College, you might have a couple of TrackMan CSVs. You know, people going to D3 college, indie guys, like they might have nothing. So how do you manage that?
Well, we do the baseline bullpen. I mean, that's the simple answer is you kind of, and then we can, if we absolutely had to, if it was like somebody came in for like a week and they're like, hey, I want to do a mocap, get all of that information, but I want to do a PD. It might be somewhere it's like, hey, in the mocap lab, let's try to throw like 5, 3, and 3. Like, you know what I mean? Your 5 fastballs, get the profile, check the breaking ball. Typically that stuff takes like 8 to 10 pitches to stabilize and stuff plus, but that'll give you some reference. You know what I mean? It's probably not enough, but then you can use the beginning of the session to basically better understand what the profile looks like. So I probably don't like ever, I might ask for some video if they have it to get feel for what the shape looks like. But I mean, the reality is it's just tougher, but you try to acquire it during the warm up of the PD, or basically, to be honest, a lot of our first time PD, when somebody comes in there, we're kind of just getting the profile and maybe less sensitive to like react and respond with what our thoughts are to change it.
Caravan asked about platoon splits for like in the PD discussions. Are there any discussions typically about like sequencing and like, you know, when to use this pitch or whatever? Like say you spent a couple weeks developing a pitch, you feel like it's pretty sticky. Obviously you might be like trying to deploy it in might be trying to deploy it in live ABs or whatever, but is that a part? I know there's like mixed research and stuff with the effect of sequencing or whatever, but
that's a really good one, to be honest, because I went on MLB Network Radio and they asked me like a similar thing a while ago, and I know that they've researched it through Saber. No, hey, nobody listened to it, so I'm just gonna throw that in there. We're 20 minutes in. Put a timestamp. I want a timestamp that says Langin.
This is a clip I'm putting out on Twitter.
Yeah.
Come on.
But no, I like the question because it is something that basically, I said, this is basically my response. I was just like, when guys come here, they need to get their, typically when guys come here, they need to get their talent level to a higher threshold, right? And I consider something like sequencing to be like getting the last ounce, so to speak, out of like in-game results. You know what I mean? So think of like, I mean, I don't have a great answer for you, to be honest. We talk about it a bit, but I am not of the belief that like you should necessarily like provide like a very assertive answer as to how to pitch somebody. That's just me. Like, I think we can definitely, you can kind of go like too analyst with it and remove all of the context and be like, oh, just throw all sliders. And like besides Matt Whistler, nobody does that, and there's probably a reason for that. But I think there's so many variables at play in terms of like how good is the athlete at commanding the pitch, and then like what biases do you have that make you think you should go with that pitch to that guy. The biggest thing we'll talk about is like swing paths, things of that nature, when to use the sinker, when to use the four-seamer. But in terms of like sequencing, probably something I need to like research more, and it just like the best answer I can give is just like we're so focused generally on getting the core talent level of the athlete to a spot where like, okay, now sequencing the hitter is maybe like why we're going between like AAA and the big leagues. You know what I mean? But it's not something that's typically why you can't get outs in D2 baseball. That's just my opinion.
And it's also mostly out of the athlete's control, I'd say, for like significant portion of the people you're working with, like college, you know,
because they're not calling pitches.
Most programs.
Right.
I actually don't know if I should say most, but I feel like, I don't know. What do you think? You think a majority of D1 programs, the pitching coach or someone is calling pitches?
Wearables, dude.
I don't. To be honest, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I can tell you when I coached JUCO, I would have. I called the pitches, to be honest. I know it's like an unpopular thing, but I would have definitely.
I would say it's a popular thing.
I mean, it's an unpopular thing to admit that aloud, that I work here. You know what I mean? So like, it's something that it's probably like the one thing I do that like. I'm generally on board with like, you know, like Bodie's thoughts or whatever. Like I generally like 100%. I work here, so like I'm generally on board with like most of his thoughts. But like when I think of when I coached JUCO, if I didn't call the pitches, like it was just going to be fastball paradise, you know, like that. And now the reality is I should have done a better job of like just developing the catcher's ability to notice that and think that way. But it was kind of like, you know, I was making $4,000, and I was, you know, so there was some pressure to try to have my point on all parts of the game I could. But
I've heard other takes on that dynamic where it's more about like, I don't quite remember who I remember hearing this from, but like as a pitching coach, especially at the higher levels, like, you know, D1 baseball, when it's literally your job, salary, livelihood depends on it, you know, you don't want some 18 to 22-year-old out there making the decision of I'm going to throw this pitch that then results in whatever poor result, and that's now a reflection on like your pitching staff, right? Like when it got explained to me from that perspective, I was like, okay, that makes sense. I can understand why a coach would be very adamant about like I call the pitches, you execute kind of thing. I don't necessarily think that's best for the athlete or whatever, but like hearing a take like that or that point being made was like, okay, that makes sense, right? Like if your job, your livelihood is on the line, you want to be in the position where you're calling the pitches, they're executing whatever. You can get into the whole dynamic of like the wrong pitch called with the right execution is better than the opposite of that, whatever. But I'd put money down on majority of college programs across all levels.
For sure.
They don't call their own game. I'm sure some of the better guys get the leniency to shake off one way or another, like that's always, but everywhere I played in college for sure, called pitches. Like it was really rare when we went and played someone and there wasn't a coach calling pitches.
Sure.
Because I mean that's the classic like bullpen guy's job is trying to pick signs.
Right.
You're not throwing today. Grab a clipboard and for sure, dude. I mean,
I'd say for sure that the biggest thing is like if you're going to recruit guys, pitchers, catchers, I'd look at it differently now where it's just like if people are going to talk in your organization or you're coaching, like you need to kind of have a brand that like the player comes first or like the development of the player comes first. So if it can get you better recruits because people are like wanting to develop and you like have that brand about you, maybe it's worth having like the pitch calling be whatever, a little bit worse throughout the entirety of the fall and the spring, but like you have these catchers and pitchers developing at higher rates, succeeding at higher levels, and then you get just like your core talent level that you acquire through recruiting should in theory go up because you're providing those opportunities and such. Yeah. So that's in hindsight, like that's probably how I would have done it. I just another thing I think is like JUCO. It's a 2-year thing. A lot of people go to JUCOs and they don't know the rules of baseball, to be honest. And then you've got so many transfers nowadays that like it's almost like from the coaching standpoint, it's kind of like transactional. Like we don't know if this kid's going to be here next year, and like if it's his third, So that I think that those types of things probably lean into maybe why there's not as much autonomy with catchers and pitchers calling their game.
I definitely think that there's a weird attribution dynamic to pitch calling. Like honestly, I think it's pretty trivial in some cases in terms of like it. The thing that pissed me off about pitch calling was that it was the easiest scapegoat against execution.
Sure, good cop out.
Right? Like if you shake off the coach, you throw this pitch and, it gets hit for a double or a homer or whatever, and he's like, don't ever shake me off again. It's like, I mean, if I just throw a better pitch there, I look like a fucking genius, you know? If I just execute a little better. And, I mean, granted it's fucking the PIL and studs, but half the time, dude, I just get I'm like too lazy to shake off sometimes. Right. And I almost look
at... Are they calling your pitches for the studs?
We just have our catcher. No. Gotcha. There's no coach that calls it. I mean, technically I call my own game, but my shake-off percentage is probably like 1 in 1,000 pitches or something. Most of the time I'm just like, yeah, fuck it, let's go. Right. Some of those times too, I think of it as like a challenge. It's weird because in live ABs here, when you don't have a catcher, is one of the few times where someone isn't like giving me an initial suggestion or something. Because I remember that one of the first like live sessions I'd had was like, oh damn, like I'm dictating, pace. Sometimes, dude, I kind of like being able to like turn off and not think about that aspect and just let the catcher put down fingers and it's like, okay, slider, I'll just like execute it.
Right.
I think there's definitely an aspect of that I like at least.
I mean, in football, the offensive coordinator calls the plays,
Yeah.
Like, I think there's things like that where it's... I can see both sides of it.
I feel like I'd get like galaxy-brained mid-outing.
Langin's first guest to finish a beer faster than me. Baby,
let's go.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it'd be easy to get galaxy-brained if you put all that pressure,
Oh, sure.
That's the other thing, too, with it. Like, when I was talking about, like, coaches talking about their job and it's kind of on the line. Like, it's going to be tough to expect a kid in school who has like all these classes that he has to be doing well in. Like, what if you have actually good advanced scouting reports at the D1 level? Like, you're now going to expect on top of, you know, homework, daily class, practice, strength and conditioning, all that stuff. Be like, hey, guess what? We're going to play this Power 5 team. Here's a scouting report of their last 100 at-bats. Know this because you're calling all your own pitches, right? Whereas you could just have a guy, a pitching coach, whatever, an analytics team that runs through it. So that's kind of another side where I'm like, I don't mind pitches or pitching coaches calling pitches. Like, I don't think it's a.
So do you guys think like catchers are better at calling pitches between like college playing levels? Like, do you think a D1 catcher is better than a D2 catcher, better than a D3 catcher? Or do you think at that point it's like all kind of the same?
I'd guess selection bias, to be honest. If you call your game, you've met a threshold that's a stupid answer. But
I would guess it's pretty trivial. I kind of along the lines of what I was saying. I think at the Power 5 level, like thinking about SEC baseball, you're probably better off letting the coach or whoever it is that is actually dealing with all these scouting reports, letting them just call the game and make the decisions. Because dude, it'd be pretty hard to just ask some sophomore starting catcher and be like, all right, here's who we got this weekend. Like, memorize all of this, take into account all of our guys' arsenals, you know, their performance and pitches, and you're making the decision every 15, 20 seconds, as opposed to just the guy who's literally paid to, you know, based on the pitching staff's results, let him do it. He's putting in all the work there.
But it's like counterpoint, speaking as someone who hasn't played college baseball, but I feel like catchers and just like modern players are going to be better at interpreting some of those reports too, right?
Yeah.
Because the assumption there is that the D1 coach like not only believes in it but also like can interpret it, can come up with actionable items off it,
right?
Like game plans. But I mean, I think your point stands. Just like a.
I think the best dynamic, thinking through it more, is just like give a little bit of leniency or autonomy to the catcher and pitcher. Like, if you see something, let them maybe say, hey, you can, you know, if you feel like what I just gave you is off and you think you have a better idea based on what you're seeing in the box, something that the third base coach did, whatever, like, sure, go ahead, justify it after. Like, I think that's probably the healthiest, some sort of hybrid, you know?
Speaking of, really quick interjection, but we should have, speaking of D1 coaching and catching your catcher, our old roommate Jagar on the podcast, dude.
Yeah. He does a lot of the pitching stuff.
Is he still coaching
at
West Virginia?
Yeah.
I haven't seen him since the podcast started. I only saw him. I saw him 2020 ABCA last time.
We could do a double. We got two. Oh yeah, that'd be great because Sigmund went there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. WVU alum. Who else went there? Carp, right?
Oh really?
Didn't David Carpenter went to?
I don't know. To search it, you have to Google that one. I don't know.
I think that's right.
I don't know. The only Did
you go to WVU? Who? When we went for the?
I thought I said, did you go to WVU?
Yeah, I know.
Was that you? Did I go to WVU?
No, wasn't me. Steven Skosh.
That mocap trip. Did you go there?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think it was just you, dude. Wasn't it?
That might be right.
Lone trip.
Yeah, I think it was.
Speaking of scouting reports, I know like these D1 teams have like pretty big student manager and analytics teams. Do they like how many advanced reports do you think get run right now?
Shout out Demon Deeks, one of the best records, college baseball.
What'd you ask?
How many advanced reports are there? Do you think out of
what
all of the
proportion?
colleges in the no, just like total number. Like how many colleges do you think have advanced reports going into a weekend series?
Like basically something more advanced than like I guess no. I guess anything. I was thinking it's like something more advanced than like.
What's your threshold for going from report to advanced?
I don't know. Like
something more than notes.
Something more than just like notes based on like in-game success.
I don't know for sure. I can't imagine many though. That's just like I know they've got some True Media stuff and they've got TrackMan, but. I
think our definition of advanced might be different than normal college person advanced.
I'm like kind of like anchoring on maybe a little bit more like fundamental than what the minor league teams might have.
Yeah, and I don't even know exactly what they get. I mean, when at D3 we got like going onto the bus when we were on our way to wherever for the next few games, we would just get a stapled pamphlet of papers and all the stats of the team and that. So that's like I wouldn't call that advanced.
Yeah. No.
higher levels going into weekends, yeah. Like, I mean, granted, I had Kai at Northern Colorado, and he would just crush through film, watch a bunch of stuff.
He's with the Guardians still?
No, he's the bench coach for the Giants.
Giants.
Oh, but he was with the Guardians, right?
Yeah, he was
Or
with the
I guess when
Guardians.
They were the Indians.
Yeah, he was with the Indians.
Okay.
They're their bench coach, mini Gabe Kapler. As he got called it. No, just when the playoffs were going on, because they were always standing next to each other, it looked so similar.
Well, I mean, kind of. Yeah.
It's actually crazy. Yeah, I had him at UPS and at Northern Colorado. But when we were there, I mean, we would get pretty they were qualitative notes.
Yeah.
I don't think we got anything quantitative.
Yeah.
It was like based on, swings in certain zones or on certain pitches. We'd get some decent platoon splits, but it was mostly just like watching video or based on their stats, a couple qualitative notes, seeing some success that they, like a previous opponent attacked with fastball early and that was good, or, finish with sliders away. Here's what he did in most of his strikeouts. And I mean, that was mid-major D1.
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty regular at that level. I'm sure SEC, Power 5, any of these schools with large analytics teams, I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're getting like some actually pretty intense, like quantitative advanced reports. Wouldn't be surprised, at least.
And a lot of that probably just comes from.
I got no clue, man. I got no clue.
A lot of that probably just comes from like word of mouth, right? Like talking to other coaches, talking to buddies, like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was wondering with that
seasons.
stuff, with the qualitative stuff, like how much. Now that I think about it, even at UPS we had that. There would be a couple like notes on guys.
Like what? Like this guy blows.
Nothing quite like that. Just like little things.
Get to the point, man. I like
fuck
that.
around the sweeper on this guy. It doesn't matter what happens.
More along the lines of like off speed early finish with stuff like that. I don't know. At the upper levels. And I don't even know minor league baseball too. I have no frame of reference for what they kind of get or what they work with there.
Langin, how do you think the pro off season went this year? This is your second one, or is it your third one? Because you came in fall 2019.
It's really my second one. I mean, I was an intern from December my first year in 2019 to whatever May. So basically my second. It was good. I think we had as many like big leaguer arms as we've had in terms of like guys who had the advantage plan, things of that nature. So speaking on that standpoint, obviously good. And I mean, it was good. I mean, we had Arizona, so like there's like a huge component of it I didn't get to see good. I mean, so there's like the things that happened in Arizona that was like 40% of it. I just don't. I mean, I speak with those guys all the time.
40% of like
the
pro guys.
I mean, probably like 75, 80%. But guys came up and assessed here.
Yeah.
Worked with certain guys, etc. But a lot of the pro guys, honestly, are in Arizona. So, and like there's good back and forth between like what's going on down there and such. But like I'm not working hands on with like as many of those guys just because I'm up here. But I mean, in terms of like advantage plan guys or just like guys we've got on that plan, like I think this is the best we've had. So a lot of pros, obviously a couple pro days that happened. So I can't really get into like an absurd amount of details with it, but it's always, I mean, pro off season is probably the most enjoyable time working here, honestly. That in summer, and then in between those two, it's kind of a whole lot of nothing. But
dries up for a bit,
right?
For sure.
Dude, that's what we're hitting Matador tonight, baby.
Yeah, that's damn right, man.
I mean, if it's not pro off season in summer, you can definitely afford to get blacked out and show for work the next day, right?
Sure. I can modify the schedule maybe a little bit too. Yeah, no kidding.
When I think of Matador, that is not what I think of. I think of just nachos.
Yeah, no, blacked out on nachos.
Both,
That's what I meant. Blacked out on nachos.
Yeah.
But I mean, we did have some. The biggest thing is we got more insights for this off season, like the intended zones. So I think in terms of the things we worked on, I mean, to be honest, probably like pre-2020, it was mainly just like guys who came just need to throw harder. I'm not saying we still don't get those guys. It's still probably like commonly what we're getting, but the ability to train dudes through other methods as opposed to just like purely velocity. Yeah. Obviously, the PD stuff is probably like people come here for that as well, just strictly for pitch designs. But the ability to incorporate command, leverage the heat maps, the best he created, and basically script out bullpens and use the intended zones, and like I've gotten some very good feedback from athletes on like how that improves the stimulus of the workout by having something that like hey, here's where you're throwing it. Here's, oh, you missed. Like, after the bullpen, you can see, like, how good or shitty you were.
Yeah.
And, like, it makes every bullet kind of count more. So
Yeah,
that
for
part of
sure.
it I've really, really enjoyed this offseason, to see the ability to prove basically further that, like, hey, we can kind of, like, all of the aspects of pitching, all of the variables, like, we're kind of on. So
yeah, I think each offseason we just kind of like go up the next like ladder rung in terms of like previous offseason. We had like a handful of these like outlier, 40-man big leaguers, and then we just like the next year it's like we normalize that to where just big leaguers show up and fart 94 in the mocap lab, and that's just Tuesday, or previous MVPs and Cy Award winners and stuff.
Right.
What are, since we have like kind of a down period now before college summer starts, are there any like things that you're excited about getting like kind of into the nitty gritty and getting prepared for college? Is there anything like pitching boys working on, or like going into this season with the more downtime?
I mean, I think continuing to configure like how intended zones can be used best, or like to get that feedback to the athlete in a manner that maybe takes honestly like less time, just like being able to identify directly like here's how you should change your targeting strategy, or at times it's just very simply like your command's bad, things like that. Honestly, a lot of systems things, whether it's creating the electronic. This isn't like a fun thing to talk about on a podcast, but they're like making it so it's easier.
Dude, we'll double
making
task.
it so it's easier to like go and to grab a pitch that you want to see. Like you can just like bucket it by the movement profile, and then like immediately find that for whether it's content or honestly to just get more visuals.
Like having a database of videos that you can just query for anything.
Right, and just I think we can do that, but like to literally just have it auto populate into folders, and then we could probably get to a point where it's like when we're running PDs. It's just like, oh, you threw this pitch, and like we can just go to the top. We have all of these slurves, all of these like sweepers, all of these efficient curveballs, depending on what we want the athlete to see, and then just in real time they can see what that is supposed to look like.
Yeah, that's gas. I remember when I first started here full time, started going on the biomechanics, because the Tour of America where we went on, took the lab to other places and did assessments. That was like still very active when I started, so I was following. I was tagging along with Anthony and Joe to the trips that they went on, so I could learn how to do it, set it up myself, go through the meetings. And the meetings was the biggest part, like talking to athletes and explaining a report when I haven't really pitched in 5 years or whatever. But one of the things that stood out to me with Anthony is he had like a folder full of GIFs of like the best throwers. At the time, we didn't have a ton, but we had like, okay, this guy moves really fucking good. He's like 5'7" or 5'8", and he throws 95, and we like have a GIF of his skeleton. We have a GIF of his skeleton, and we can see like, okay, this is what I'm talking about, like regarding what position and everything. So I don't know. It seems like a super powerful thing to have when like trying to explain these more complex things with athletes, or more abstract.
Right. No. Yeah. The visuals are, whether it's like biomechanics, like the numbers are like they need to be there 100%, but when you can like add an additional visual or something like that just kind of makes it come. There's the amount of visual learners that we have that I've like ran into, at least with athletes, is pretty absurd. You'll try to put something in a text message about like, hey, here's your command data for the day. Median miss was 14, and like don't get me wrong, I'm not like an idiot. Like I provide references for like what the average is, but. And it's like, okay, I get that. That makes sense. And then you like just send a visual of like their plot, and they're just like, oh okay, shit. Like I can see that heat map and like where it, and it just kind of makes it makes it easier on you. But to be honest, it just makes it easier on you as a coach. So
I think it gets easier as you go. I think that type of thing was definitely way more important back then. It's probably still important now, but it kind of like the importance of those visuals almost drops down as the learning curve shrinks, right? 100%. Because the base level of understanding for like pitch design or biomechanics is already so much higher than it was when we were doing that. Because back then, dude, it was hieroglyphics. I mean, meeting with an athlete and talking to them about shoulder horizontal abduction before
a lot of them
anyone really talked about that.
Or like younger.
It's just like, all right, I can tell this is making no sense at all to you. Right. Here's an overhead video of Joe Boyle throwing 100 miles an hour. This is a good example. Like, this is what I'm talking about. And then here's
this is
you.
a good example of
You know?
a good pitcher.
Yeah, and then I'm
Throwing
like,
18 miles harder.
yeah, I'm like, here's
you'll
here's
be
you.
there.
You know, it's
Right.
like, and that makes sense. But the previous 10 minutes of me trying to explain
Sure.
like transverse plane, humeral movement, all this
Right.
stuff was just like, I'm sure it's
For
like
sure.
pretty similar on the
Oh,
on the pitch design side.
Without
That's why
a doubt.
early on I like went really deep into the Blender stuff to get the edge visuals. Like, that was one of the
Sure.
early impetus of those, because even getting into that, you know, HB and VB weren't common acronyms
right.
as they are now, you
Sure.
know, so it's a lot easier to explain, like, what does that mean? What does horizontal brake, vertical brake? Now you hear those things and you understand how they're calculated, what goes into it. So
Sure.
I think it just gets easier as we go, for sure with that.
Right.
Was that have you noticed similarly in athlete meetings over your time here? Like, has describing biomech reports or pitch design things, has it gotten easier year over year with athletes, or?
I'd say pitch design definitely. Now, like, don't get me wrong, there's still, like, you still have to have kind of the tool in your toolbox to be able to, like, give the beginner tutorial. But, like, that, if that's like a 1 out of 10, if maybe like 2 years ago it was like a 2, you can kind of start off with like a 4 out of 10 in terms of like the in-depth explanation. Like, there's there's generally an understanding of, like, the biggest thing is we're basically at the point where we know what spin rate is. I'm just talking about, like, if an average athlete comes into here. But, like, there's still a lot of people who are like, oh, spin rate, I have high spin, so, like, I should throw up in the zone. And it's, you know, that
Right.
we're at least to there. You know what I mean? And now, like, the guys who are here for more than a month, like, they have all of that understood. They know, like, what type of, like, fastball variation is probably more useful for them, et cetera, or if they can blend both. But, like, yeah, I'd say for sure. Also, I've just understood it better, so I can you can better identify when somebody's struggling with it, or, like, if they need more. You know, that sounds weird, but, like, you can pick up on if they have half a clue what the hell you're saying. You know, the biomech stuff is always kind of hit or miss, but I'm telling you, when people retest and you do those retest meetings, you can see it, like, within, like, the second retest meeting you do, they're like pointing their report, hey, standard deviations, like, you know, could you explain that a little bit more? And it's like, that never happens with the athlete who begins, you know what I mean? So I think that's a lot of the value of training here, honestly, is, like, if you want to coach, like, you can, I mean, to be honest, if you want to coach, like, you more or less, when you're training, you really care about baseball, and you throw 87 and you're 19, and it's like, you know, I want to play in the majors, or I want to play D1, but, like, if you're, like, on the fence, you can, like, really figure out if you want to coach down the road if you come here, and you're going to get a lot of information that's going to be advantageous for you in the future.
That's definitely one of the advantages I think that we have, and that we'll always kind of have, because as you're saying that, I think that's a really good point, and it applies on the biomech end too, of as the knowledge base rises and that learning curve kind of shrinks for everyone, you almost get this effect of people show up with these preconceived biases that are wrong, you know,
100%.
And we almost have to, like, untrain those. Like, the guy that comes in saying, I have high spin, I should just throw up in the zone. Right. It's like, oh, there's another level beyond that in terms of, like, efficiency and brake profile. Like, it's not just spin. Same thing on the biomech end, you know, like, they maybe have seen a thread from one of us or a blog or from someone else about a certain metric or movement biomechanically, and then they can just, like, lock in on that because that's their first introduction.
Right.
And we obviously have this, like, breadth of knowledge around everything else that we can say, yeah, that's just a piece of it. You know, like, we're so many levels deep that we can understand and give, you know, the athlete the better direction, kind of, like, away from those biases, I think.
Yeah, I think that's when I talked about, like, picking up on, like, if somebody's struggling with something, you can kind of tell, like, if you're talking to somebody in a biomech meeting, if they're, like, weighting something maybe a little bit more heavily than they should, you know. And I'm not saying, you know what I mean? Things like that, dude. You can configure whether or not, like, hey, your arm action's horrible. So, like, it used to be when I do meetings, I'd just, like, go through the report and, like, kind of, like, I'd say what happened, but I wouldn't necessarily put any, like, pathos or, like, passionate talk into it. Now when I do those, I, like, get very assertive. I'm not trying to be like a, you know, oh, I'm a big guy, I'm the coach, you're the athlete, but it's just like, look, this is our best. If the biggest thing is, like, we're trying to, over the next 6 weeks, have the best development plan for you. There's no way we can know with, like, 1,000,000% certainty the exact route to that. Like, I don't think you can know with 100 that amount of certainty. But based off of like the variables of importance we've historically seen, we can say that this is a better bet than focusing on the same thing you've been focused on, especially if it's like something that just doesn't typically predict velocity, you know? So if you can pick up on those things, I think that's where, and again, everybody who trains here is a little unique in terms of like how domed up they were previously or what information they've received or if they just need to get their workload appropriate. But I think that's like the beauty of coming here and training here is you see people benefit kind of like disproportionately at times, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's spot on. I think there were previously, definitely personally on my end, like one of the worries that I had was our understanding of biomechanics and insights and all that on the applied end, like getting, you know, just everyone figuring it out, right? Like you know, us putting stuff out and then figuring out like the same type of things that we do. But I'm just not worried about that because we're just so many levels deep and we have so much knowledge that we'll be able to like, I mean, I hear it all the time, training on the floor lately, just like being around athletes, you know, I'll hear them talk about like a certain metric or a certain movement biomechanically, and kind of, you know, have that same moment you were talking about where it's like, I know that you're really focused on that, but that's probably not it. You know, like I know you may have seen an Instagram post or a tweet or whatever that talked about how that worked. And yeah, that's great for that athlete. It worked really, really well for them. But I'm just telling you, like,
it's not just about ankle dorsiflexion.
Right. Yeah. That's not your problem.
Right.
You know? So,
for sure.
Those kind of things. Yeah. I think that's pretty big. You got any college or even pro guys that you worked with this off season? Obviously, that you can talk about.
Sure.
You're especially jazzed about, or give some shout outs.
Yeah, I mean, Cole Uvila is probably like the guy who's been here for a long time, so he's certainly had a lot of people play a role in his development, mainly himself.
Dude.
But he's probably, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Just like love the dude, has like the longest, it seems to have the longest tenured ties to Driveline, etc.
Solid beard.
Yeah, he came in one day without it. It was a little starstruck.
Yeah. Attractive wife.
All right, Jesus.
Kind of crazy.
Keep going with the shout out, dog. Keep the shout out too.
You got into the wedding or what?
So
not
yet. I mean, wait, they got married, right? Oh yeah,
So you didn't get in the wedding, Jesus. Yeah. You didn't get. You were trying to prepare yourself to get into that one.
That's especially a weird thing to say because I knew her before I knew Cole. Because she played softball at UPS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we went to UPS at the same time, and I remember.
Did Cole go to UPS?
No.
How does that college get away with using the acronym UPS? Ain't nobody gonna know what the hell. There's only one place you think about when you think of that.
It's gonna be exciting year for him, right? New org, and
winning the minor league Rule 5 draft and.
That shit got me so hyped.
Yeah,
right.
Same.
When that happened, I remember just like sitting at my desk and being like, "Holy fuck, Cole's gonna be a big leaguer."
Right.
You know, like that when that happened, I was like, "Oh my god, dude, that is so sick." Because I feel like I've known of him because of Gala at UPS for so long, and then getting like reintroduced when I came to Driveline, like saw him training, was like, "Oh, that's who that is." Makes sense. But I mean, yeah, dude, I feel like. That is just such a sick story.
Well, and it's cool because the training he didn't do any velocity days. I put a thread about that. He didn't do a single velocity day this year. Now he threw live a bunch, but it was basically in the off season. It was just like intended zones the entire time. So like you think of when Cole probably first got to Driveline, that was the last thing he was possibly thinking of. You know, so to see that kind of transpire, see the growth of Driveline and the growth of his career, and then like we both identify, hey, this is what you should do. We measure his like miss distances from his minor league video and see that his slider just like misses by 18 inches. It's way too much. And we both come to the agreement that's a good idea. And like we're willing to risk that without like it's tough to do something novel because like when you do velo work, you at least have some reference of like what the average athlete gains, right? But if you're doing command work, you're going into it blind. Like what if he loses velo, you know, things in that nature. But I think that's probably one of the cooler ones. Thomas Rui was my roommate in college. I'm telling you, in terms of like added, and I don't know if he'll be a big leaguer. I really fucking hope he is. But in terms of like talent level added from the age of 22 years old to the age of like 25. I don't know of anybody in the world who added more than him. He couldn't be. So for reference, I played at Nebraska Kearney. I was always injured, but nonetheless, I played at UNK. We went 14-35 the year I transferred there. I was injured. Thomas Rui couldn't get on the travel squad. Couldn't travel with the team. ERA was like 8. And that dude now is throwing like 98 miles an hour. Has a million injuries, had to go through a ton of setbacks, etc. To see that, it's pretty emotional for me, to be honest. Like to see his development and also that Driveline, just the entire,
came with us to AZ.
Right. And having known him before,
Driveline AZ, pop-up shop OG.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's cool. A couple other ones. I mean, Sean Newcomb with the Braves. Dan Winkler, I put a bunch of stuff out on him. He's refined his command. We did a lot of stuff with intended zones. He's been awesome. Joe Barlow, actually, my funny story. So Barlow was the closer for the Rangers this year, towards the end of the year, or last year. But that was my first pitch design I ever did. And he developed a slider, and he threw it 40% of the time.
Oops.
So it's just funny to you know what I mean? I don't know, he hadn't thrown one before, and he had like an 8 ERA in AAA. It was a small sample. He kind of killed it all the time before that, but he threw that slide. That was the first pitch design I did.
Yeah.
I didn't know I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, but the systems are so good here that even me, like with limited experience prior,
Yeah.
So that one's pretty cool. Caleb Thielbar, mentioned him previously. I don't want to leave people out, but it feels inevitably I'm going to. Matt Willardson. Matt Willardson's been killing it for North Carolina State.
Yeah.
Wes Burton, Mississippi.
Big West.
And then there's a bunch of guys at Washington. Josh Emanuels, Stephon Roth, who leads the Pac-12 in ERA. Juan primarily worked with him, to be honest, but worked a little bit with him in his slider. There's a lot of guys. I don't want to obviously inevitably when you mention 8 guys, you're leaving people off there. But Joel Condrier, I'm going to keep going, so I should probably just stop there. But
yeah, of course. Thanks for not mentioning Cliff Holmes. That's noted.
Cliff Holmes still got some work to do. Cliff Holmes still top spins his slider with a 4-foot release.
I can't believe I didn't even make. I feel like you just rattled off 15 names. I didn't even make the cut on any of those.
Dude,
you was about to. I just cut them off before you.
Yeah. earlier
that one hurts.
When you said some athletes inevitably.
Seth Mayberry, I got to get Seth Mayberry in there. That dude made a ton of progression. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Earlier when you said some athletes inevitably get a little bit more attention than others, and I was like, I wonder where Cliff. Falls on this range.
I'm right here, baby.
Well, one question I had about some of the stuff you're talking about command-wise. So, I mean, we don't have as longitudinal of a data set on median this distance, how that impacts the shape of your other pitches, what the expected gain would be. Are you starting to get a feel for that? Like if someone comes in, they want to do command work, their median miss distance, for example, using Cole's example, is 18 inches. Do you can you kind of classify okay, we should probably get that within 12 to 15. That's going to take around 3 to 6 weeks. And this is how we kind of want to slot it in. 1 command workout a week, 2 command workouts a week. Are you starting to kind of build a framework of that, or is it too early?
So I think I'll try to answer it a little bit less to the exact question you gave. I think you can definitely configure how important the command is of the athlete relative to the stuff. Some guys are all command, some guys are all stuff, but a lot of people are in between. So you can configure there how you want your workload to be distributed. I don't think that's necessarily with pulse and things of that nature. You can configure that pretty simply. You're just changing you're just changing the workout and what you're trying to accomplish within the workout. The median miss distance, to me, I know that pitchers that miss by more than 20 inches are literally unused, not usable. You may as well not have the pitch. It's basically you aim middle, 0-2 count. If you miss by 20 inches, if you're middle, you miss to the down glove side, you'll probably get a swing or something. But for the most part, if you're missing by that much, you more or less don't have a pitch. So it's not there tends to be if you're missing by more than 17 inches or something with your breaking ball, it doesn't really matter what the stuff plus is, unless if you are literally
extremely precise,
or just you're using it in very unique contexts that are all swing and miss, or your targeting aggressiveness is just very just over the middle of the plate. You know what I mean? But we can reference big league averages and configure hey stuff plus of this is in the 75th percentile, command plus is in the first percentile, let's just omit the stuff for the time being. Like, we just need to get the command to like, we need it to be at least like 15th percentile, so you can like throw it down the middle and get like a solid.
First
you know,
percentile, dude.
What?
That's a red flag.
Yeah,
right.
I've got, I've had a few guys like that. So
those are like the guys in the when they have the bullpens down the foul lines and they have to like pause the game every now and then because they're just yeeting balls all the way to the backstop. Yeah. He's just out on the warm up mound like, my bad.
I mean, it makes it a lot easier to just be like, hey, the shape of the pitch probably ain't like, you don't have the pitch. That's like when I talked to Cole, I basically said, I was like, when I watch, and again, it's very anecdotal, but like you can see it in the data too. I was like, when I watch your games, nobody sees you as having a slider. Like on the report, it's most likely just like, breaking ball spit. Like if you get an 0-2 count, great. But like how many, I mean, Cole's really good. He'll get into a lot of those, but like how often is he going to be in that? You know what I mean? Yeah. Especially if he basically is a 2-pitch pitcher. Mm. So you can more or less just better articulate that, hey, like stuff plus probably isn't where we need to go with this. Like we need to just hammer on the command components of the pitch and like get that to a respectable point. Once you get to like, I would argue once you get like the median miss to like the 50th percentile, et cetera, you've kind of got to start to determine like, well, maybe we just sell out for stuff. Like it's close enough to that threshold and there's less certainty of like if we can like squeeze the command to get higher. Whereas with the stuff it's just known that you can like make small changes and improve it. So I think the biggest thing is we get to the point where it's like, and we basically got this data where it's like, okay, you've got your stuff components and you've got your command components. On the stuff components, you've got like your biomech and your strength stuff. That's how you get your velocity, pitch designs mixed in as there as well. And then the command stuff, for the time being, like I just don't know that like mocap. I mean, I'm sure dudes who like have a massive variance in their like mechanics pitch to pitch. Sure, but they're probably also throw slow as shit too. But like at this point, command is basically like external cues or providing feedback. I think I don't know that there's a ton.
And just practicing it, right?
That's not. I mean,
I think training it with feedback is really
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, walk before you run, right? Like,
yeah. What are some? I saw Cole put a video on Twitter where he was like playing catch in one of our cages. A lot of people are probably like listening are probably familiar. Long toss inside. Had like put up a target on the net and was just throwing to it and basically, said like no wasted throws or whatever. Right. What are there any other good examples of like ways that you fit in command training to? I know we do it with the plyo wall too, like putting targets on the plyo wall and everything.
I like that a lot. I'm pretty in on that.
Sure, yeah, no, definitely the plyo wall stuff. I mean, that's also just like you can improve your mechanics kind of by doing that. If you're too close to the wall or you're throwing in like cutting it or like they're
it's just like more intense.
Jake's OG study, Jake's and Rob's OG study where you just move like 2 feet back and then everyone's throwing like 3 miles harder on their like pivot picks and roll-ins and everything.
That was the OG before that I sent you.
I know what you're talking about, the slideshow.
Yeah, the thing me, Rob, and James did.
I think
just like we just gave people feedback on how many strikes they threw in their last bullpen, and just giving them feedback.
I mean that's the main thing I've heard from the intended zone stuff is. I was working with Alex Marathue today, who's like an indie ball guy, and he was just like he kind of just like stopped mid session. He's like, I didn't expect this to be this tough. Like I knew it, but like, man,
you just don't think about it.
He's like, I can really see how much I miss, and like the stimulus is just incredible to like actually have that weighted against you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas like in a game, and again, you got to like in a game when you're pitching, maybe like a shorter memory or whatever, but like when you're just doing like midweek pens, I mean, you throw the pen, you
nail it in.
It's like sure, like we can figure out if your command is solid. Or if it's like really good, we can't really figure out anything in between. And we need to know if you have like 20th percentile command for that day or 80th. And that just like gets kind of thrown out of the water. So,
or even when you're in training mode and you just go like months, months is a lot, but weeks for sure without playing catch with someone. Yeah. I noticed that a ton. Like there are definitely days where I'm just in the cage. I'm just looking for throws,
Right.
And I'll think about that while I'm doing it. Like, dude, the variance and where these throws into the net are going is just completely all over the place.
Right.
And it's almost a shock once you get back out to just like playing catch with a person, and having to like be within a 5 foot radius or whatever from close distance. That definitely you just like forget the intent of it. So mixing in things like that, being cognizant of it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think for one, like if you're having those issues, like maybe just like doing more short boxes too. Just changing maybe not as many plyos, like more 5 ounces. I think like at the end of the day, like what you kind of touched on earlier is just like coming here and like making it very contextual to the athlete, so they know like exactly what they need to work on. Like because there is a time
And it changes.
You know what I mean? Because like we talk about this and like we're discussing a certain type of athlete profile, like that struggles to command the ball or like has they waste throws, etc. But for some guys, like that's the entire point of throwing the plyos. Is like when I pitched my first year in JUCO, it was almost like every throw I made, it was almost like I couldn't change my mechanics. I couldn't like do anything to like see if I had a higher talent level because there was too much pressure that I was gonna like overthrow the dude and have to go run. You know? So like you do need the time to, whether it's the leather weighted balls with the drills or the plyos with the drills, to like experiment. And you have the wall there and you should have like a target, but maybe it's a bigger circle and you can like just mess around with your feels and trying to experiment with mechanics. You know what I mean? So
I think it's totally fine. Like talking about just throwing into the net, like I think there is definitely a time and a place for all those things, and it changes. It's very dynamic. It's based on what you're doing. I like that a lot. Like if there's a hitter in the box, for sure, I'm trying to hit a spot or be in the zone, whatever. But there are definitely times, especially over the last few months training, where I don't care where it's going, I'm just trying to get an idea of if I move or I do this cue or I try to get in this position, does velocity go up? Maybe there's something there. Like there's definitely room for experimentation. That's why the like very, very classic, watching a video of a pull down or seeing someone hit a mount velo PR and commenting on the location of it is just like, obviously we weren't working on that right there. You know? Like, I expect the same energy of you if we post a video of someone just smashing intended zones, going like 20 for 20. Like let's put that content out. And I expect you to just like retweet, this is the greatest thing in the world, like 20 strikes and 20 pit. It's like we're just not working on that right now.
For sure.
That doesn't mean we don't give a shit about it. Like obviously there's just a time and a place. It fluctuates based on your needs.
Well, we should probably wrap soon, but one question I want to ask you that I heard you talk about last time was gambling and how you first like kind of started getting into like sports gambling. Do you know off the top of your head what's the biggest loss and what's the biggest win you've had on any one bet or any one night? If we're trying to get crazy,
I didn't put much money on stuff, to be honest. I did have Auburn to win. Oh, God, I think it was the 2018. It might have been the 2019 national championship game. And, they, like, fouled Virginia with, like... There was, like, a three-pointer by Virginia in the corner. And I think the guy actually fouled him. But I had that ticket at, like, $25. And it was, like, 75-1. And they were in the Final Four.
Oh, shit.
I was about to guess 25-1 because I thought that's what you're saying. But, yes.
Or, sorry. I put $25 on it at 75-1.
Yeah.
And they were in the Final Four.
Yeah.
So I was pissed off, and I didn't like hedge it or anything.
Yeah.
But I never bet enough to like. I was mainly talking about like when I bet for the first time, I was just like, holy fucking shit! Like there is so much noise, and I mean, fucking seriously, like it's not people like, oh, if you want to improve command, you should do this, and it's like, no, that's not the question. The question is like, this guy is going to take 6 weeks of training, and you have to come up with a protocol that gives him the best chance to improve his true talent level in that 6 weeks. And there's like a variety of factors or a variety of methods to do that, and they involve stuff, velocity, command, mental game, etc. You've got to pick the best one, and you should do it based off of like objective data and some type of probabilistic thinking. And like that's what gambling basically taught me is like, no, you don't know that, like, the Cowboys have 2 good wide receivers or some bullshit and they're going to, like, destroy the Lions secondary. Like, that's not, like, there's too many other facets, and also you're betting against Vegas.
Also, everyone knows that. That's what the line was set off of.
So, like, I think everybody, this is a stupid thing to say aloud, but, like, everybody should, like, gamble on, like, 100 fucking sports games before they try to, like, overly assert their opinion of anything on sports. I'm being very serious about that. Like, I think
I've done that.
Like,
I don't know how I've done, but I think I've done that.
Like, I literally, even if it's just like pitch selection, something like that, I just hear people like, oh, like you shouldn't have thrown him a cutter in that count. I'm like, do you know the variety of like
Then
potential
actually-
outcomes
yeah.
of, you know, like.
Put $10 down on the next pitch of what he's going to throw.
Yeah,
you know?
then
Like,
be
see
fucking
it.
Bayesian
Yeah.
and put some money on the
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
You know, you can bet on it. You can literally bet on it. If you know sports that well, you have to get 55%. Bet on the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
And tell me, and the result and everything.
All baseball's about is throwing some fucking strikes. Okay, bet on it. But throwing strikes,
The next strike is going to be a good outcome.
like,
Let's go.
Bet on the guy who has the best command but throws 85 and see how many.
like in D2, that's fucking great.
Yeah.
But like, modify your context when those opinions are made. You know, modify it. Hey, in high school baseball, I think when you throw 77, pound the zone, like you're gonna get really good outcomes. That's probably fucking true. Like that's not any. I don't think anybody's gonna debate that. I coached high school baseball.
Yeah.
Like the small game works. Very few players have the bat speed to hit it over the fence. So like. Developing runs through the inability of the fielders to make plays, yes, that's a thing. Also, it doesn't fucking help those kids like develop the skills to get to where they want to be. You know.
Well, also I didn't remember if you made any bets with me or not, but I was thinking about the time the Super Bowl at Lindley's house, 2021, because we were both rooting for the Chiefs.
Right.
Did you hop in on any of those bets, or was this
No.
me going down with the sinking ship?
No, I didn't, man. I'm be honest. I made a bet on Jameis Winston. This was I made the bet before I coached JUCO baseball. No, this is the serious thing. I made the bet before I coached JUCO baseball, and Jameis Winston was like 10-1 to lead the NFL in passing yards, and he won the damn
What
thing.
season was this?
I want to say it was 19.
But was that his
2000
second year, third year?
It was the year he threw 30 interceptions with
Yeah,
the Buccaneers.
yeah.
He led the league in passing
ball, yeah.
yards that year.
Yeah.
Fucking bookie hasn't paid me yet. So
Oh,
I gotta,
really?
yeah.
No
I gotta,
way,
yeah.
dude.
I know. I can't even find like my
What's
account
the
or anything.
payout? Can you say?
I was probably like 250, 300.
go.
Like I didn't put much on it, but
Yeah.
I identified volume where I saw it,
Yeah.
and Jameis Winston had a lot of volume that year. So
Let's go.
I've had some bets I'm proud of. Plenty that I'm not. I'm trying to think of a good one. I had UCLA was playing Gonzaga in the Final Four last year. I don't know if you guys remember that game. It went to overtime. I think Gonzaga like tied up a 3 in the regular time, and then it went overtime. But I had money. I had like a good chunk of money on UCLA, at like 10-1, maybe 12-1. I think I had like $80, and it probably would have been my biggest hit. That's actually like on a 10-1 bet. Otherwise, most money I've made in one night. Most money I've made in one night off sports betting is $3,000, and I almost hit $5K. But it was bittersweet because it was off my really close friend. He was visiting, and we both decided to just put a G on every. And I knew going out way more domain knowledge to this. This is his idea. He encouraged it. We put a G on every single UFC main event of that card. It was like 5 fights. And I was up 4-0 going into the 5th fight. So I was either going to win 5 Gs or 3 Gs.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah.
that's why that's a bad stat to use.
Oh,
it's like
yeah,
most
dude.
money I've ever won in one
Yeah.
night of gambling. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
you're.
There's
Hey,
no odds in any of those. They're all just
Yeah, it's just straight. Yeah, no.
50-50 bets.
But that's something. No, he gave me
And
the
you
pick.
rotated back and forth on who
Yeah,
got first
yeah.
pick,
We-
right?
we-
So
we-
it's like that is not the gambling.
take that as
Langin
gambling
was talking
advice.
about.
I
Not
did.
the
I did
gambling.
hit Julian Edelman to win the NFL Super Bowl MVP the year they played the Rams. It was like a 10-3 game.
Oh yeah, that was about to
Yeah,
say,
I-
that was like a terrible game.
Yeah, it was.
Nobody scored.
The
till,
game
like,
was
fourth
ass,
quarter or
but I was
something.
happy
Yeah.
afterwards.
He made it right before the game.
Yeah, I can't remember what he was, like 25 or like 30. I literally bought his book. He made a biography or some shit. I just bought the damn thing. I was like, you just won me like $500. Like,
Let's go.
What's
Use your earnings
15?
to buy his- yeah.
Right.
Yeah, part of this belongs to you.
No
And
kidding.
then Kick it back.
No
to you.
kidding.
That's fire.
Oh yeah.
Swag. All right. Well, hopefully this one was recorded.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for coming
yeah.
on again.
No, no problem.
Sure, it won't be
thanks
the
for
I
last.
started ranting right at the same time. It's about like
When a course
Well,
hit.
Caravan
once
gave you-
it's when the course hit like 7/8 of the way through, just like the same thing happened.
Holy
last time.
fucking shit, man! Just bet.
Caravan gave you the second beer and it was over.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Peace, everybody. Episode 74.